So in this video I'm going to talk about why so many enlightened teachers talk about the mind as being your adversary when it comes to raising your level of consciousness and reaching enlightenment and these kind of things. It's always about the mind is bad, don't trust the mind and these things, but I never or seldom go into any detail about why and how it works. And that's what I'm going to do here. So you have to understand that I detail all of this in my ebooks. I can't really repeat everything. You have to watch my previous videos. But what this is about is that you have to realize that how the mind works, or how your own personality alter has been installed. And that happens when you're born into a negative planet like this. So then you basically have installed a rejection trauma right after birth, because you're born into a negative mass consciousness and your parents are also have a lot of negativity buried in their unconscious mind. They're usually not a very high level of consciousness, and even if they are, they still have negativity. So this is enough for the baby to interpret it as a rejection, because anything less than unconditional love for a baby will be interpreted as a rejection. And this trauma is enough to create one trauma-based mind control altar. And if you look at MK Ultra programs, you will understand this, because these programs used severe and repeated early childhood trauma to create multiple altars in these poor, unfortunate babies, and basically create multiple personality people, so they could program each personality to do certain things with hypnosis and whatnot. So this is the same in principle, it just happens with a single personality instead of multiple. And this is considered normal on this planet, and that's why nobody is questioning it, or very few people are questioning it. That's just, the way it's been. It's normal to feel that you're isolated in a personality cocoon, so to speak. And it's considered unusual or mystic to be one with reality and be one with consciousness and one with the universe. That's considered a mystic state. But that's actually the natural state, and having a trauma-based personality alter is not really natural, but that's become normal. So that's what you have to realize as the background for this. But anyway, this is also how everyone is plugged into the Matrix, so to speak. Everyone feels that they exist in their own little pod of perceived isolation and have a distorted perception of reality based on their level of consciousness, right? So having this trauma-based and negative personality structure installed, which exists like a rigid set of resistances to the flow of your natural self of pure consciousness / love. This is what makes everyone even more susceptible to programming and corruption as they grow up, because everyone feels existentially insecure and feel like they're unworthy at the deepest level because of this setup. So you become very susceptible to programming because you don't see the truth, you can't discern so easily, because you're confused by having these out of alignment, this out of alignment structured inside yourself, that your whole consciousness is being streamed through, basically. That's why everybody is sort of insecure at the deepest level, and they don't feel they have to compensate in different ways, right? You see this all over the place. People find different ways to compensate for this existential insecurity and this feeling of being unworthy. And this setup is also what actually generates the so-called mind that so many enlightened teachers talk about as being the adversary. And the mind is the domain of the collective shadow, which is worshipped as Lucifer by the so-called elite. While your higher mind or soul self uses subtle influences like your conscience and inspiration and excitement to influence you positively, the collective shadow mind uses thought voices to influence you negatively. And these thought voices may be subtle, they may seem like your own thoughts, but in reality there is no such thing as your own thoughts, because all your thoughts are attracted based on your level of consciousness. And these thought voices may also even seem to offer insights, but they are always seeking to gaslight you in a negative direction, or at the very least hold you back from increasing your level of consciousness. That's how the mind works, that's how the collective shadow works. It's trying to gaslight you or hold you back. That's its whole function, basically. That's what it does automatically. So the collective shadow does its best to exploit weaknesses and out of alignment resistances in everyone to create negativity and conflict in any way it can. And this is because the negative energies are its food source. This is far less subtle in those who suffer from schizophrenia, who get regular piranha-style attacks from the negative voices that completely drain them of all energy. I go into far more detail about this in my ebook. But basically, this has been an MK Ultra-style mind control planet for all of history, because everyone is influenced by the collective shadow of negative mind to various degrees depending on their level of consciousness. And the lower you are on the scale of consciousness, the more you are, and usually unconsciously, the more you are aligned with and serving and controlled by the collective shadow, and vice versa. So the higher you go, the less influenced and controlled and the less you're serving the collective shadow or the collective beast. And you can see this as the percentages on the scale of consciousness on the screen. And some people are actually consciously aligning with and serving the collective shadow or this Lucifer entity, including certain serial killers like Richard Ramirez, and not least the so-called ruling class elite people, or the Illuminati, or whatever we want to call these people. It's also interesting to note that something the president of El Salvador said in a recent interview with Tucker Carlson. He has put all their gang criminals in prison and reduced the murder rate to almost zero in record time. He said that these gangs actually became satanic. They were no longer just about business, drugs and money. They were actually sacrificing babies because they claimed he, as in the beast, demanded it. He also said that when you go up to a cell housing 40, 50 of these people standing there, it's like you sense a massive black hole because there is nothing there except darkness. So this is an interesting side note, like this is something that the president of El Salvador, this Bukele guy, said in an interview, and it illustrates the point, right? He noticed and picked up on these things that I'm talking about. So basically the millions of volunteers who came in for this Earth Ascension mission have managed to dismantle their own trauma-based personality and raise their level of consciousness enough so that the level of mass consciousness has stabilized in the higher 400s for some years now. And this has greatly weakened the collective shadow, which is now in a desperate battle using whatever minions it has at its disposal to try to cling to power and create as much chaos and negativity as it can to keep its luge farm of negativity going, not unlike the machines farming humans for their energy in the Matrix movie. If everyone was their natural self, free from the trauma-based altar of resistances to it, the collective shadow simply would not exist anymore. Because it's our own collective creation serving as a karmic balancing force that eventually regains equilibrium for our planet. The collective shadow may wish to maximize negativity, but in doing this, it's also inadvertently showing us our own out of alignment negativity, which we can then dismantle and integrate, thereby reducing the food source we produce for the shadow. So this is how it eventually balances everything out, by showing us our own negativity and weaknesses and out of alignment stuff that we can take responsibility for to clean up and integrate and whatnot. And this is basically the shadow is basically like a karmic balancing force in that sense. Although it wishes only negativity, it still works good in the long run, so to speak, because of this. And if it's used like it's meant to be used. But this inner work requires a certain amount of awareness and maturity in people. Otherwise, you will simply get triggered and you will blame and you will seek revenge, which is basically growing the shadow. This is the only way to grow in consciousness and move up the level of consciousness scale. You have to do the inner work, and you can learn more about how to do this. I go into very great detail about all this in my ebook. You can check the link in the description below.